What's up, everybody? Thanks as always for supporting the show. It would mean a lot to me if you would take a second to scroll down and hit that subscribe button to the Hoops Tonight YouTube channel, and then follow me on social media on TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter so you guys don't miss any of our content over the course of this season. All right, let's talk some basketball. All right, we're going to get to Boston, Dallas. This was one of Boston's best offensive games of the season. They had a 138 offensive rating. That's like completely and utterly insane. They were taking a ton of jumpers, but their jumpers were going. They took 53 jumpers in this game for 72 points. They were at 1 point per pull-up jumper, I think 21 points on 21 pull-up jumpers, but they were a staggering 1.594 points per catch-and-shoot jumper in the game against Dallas. They made 21 threes on 49% shooting, so obviously a great example of Boston's perimeter skill. But they also had a great paint scoring game, and this is something I've been harping on a lot on this show, and I wanted to dive a little bit further into their recent success there. They had 62 points in the paint against Dallas. 6 offensive rebound putbacks. I mentioned this earlier, but in earlier shows, but they averaged just 2.6 offensive rebound putbacks per game. That ranks 21st in the NBA. And they had 6 of them against Dallas, more than double their usual output. It was a big part of their late third quarter run. Jason Tatum was beating his man off the dribble, drawing in Maxi Kleber into help, and Al Horford and Porzingis were capitalizing on the back end with offensive rebound putbacks. It was actually how they helped push the lead from 7 to 13 during that span. They scored on a cut to the basket 6 times in this game. They averaged just 3.6 per game, which ranks 20th in the league. Again, these are all areas that they've massively improved on over the course of the last week for Boston. Early on, their cutting was in Dallas's 2-3 zone look. Drew Holiday and Jaylen Brown both scored on flash cuts to the middle of the floor where they were able to get easy baskets. Al Horford, though, had 2 buckets out of the dunker spot on possessions where he typically operates out of the three-point line. There was I can't remember if it was a Jaylen Brown or a Jason Tatum pick and roll, but Xavier Tillman slipped to the basket. Dallas is putting 2 on the ball most of the ball screens late in the game. They were getting absolutely torched. Boston scored 1.48 points per pick and roll, including passes in this game, which is like completely insane. So Dallas was putting 2 on the ball in the second half, and Xavier Tillman slipped to the basket. And Al Horford, in a lot of these situations, has been just chilling in the right corner, waiting for a 3. But instead, he worked his way along the baseline into the dunker spot and got an easy layup. Again, these are ways to manufacture paint points for a team that hasn't been scoring a ton in the paint this season. Xavier Tillman scored on a cut along the baseline where Jaylen Brown hit him. By the way, Jaylen Brown had an awesome playmaking game in this game. He had 5 assists with no turnovers. Thought he had a bunch of timely reads, specifically where the defense was loading up on him. And then Jason Tatum's physical aggression, that was a big part of their paint output in this game. There was a stretch in the middle of the second quarter where Dallas put Josh Green on him. And one of the specific things I've been talking about with Jason Tatum, because I want to say a lot of people get the wrong meaning of what I'm talking about when I talk about scoring in the paint versus pull-up jump shots. Like, the pull-up jumper is a part of basketball. It's a huge part of basketball. It's a huge part of my game, personally. Like, you got to be able to make pull-up jump shots. I'm just a big believer in like working with pull-up jump shots within your physical advantages. That's why I've always been such a big Kawhi fan. Kawhi takes a lot of pull-up jumpers, but the majority of the ones he takes, he uses his physicality to get close to the rim and takes short-range pull-up jump shots. Tatum, I was so impressed, just literally bullying Josh Green into that little area right inside the foul line for short-range pull-up jump shots. He made 4 pull-up jumpers that were inside the paint in this game. And I don't even think he had a miss in that range off of a jump shot. The one jumper that he missed inside the three-point line was like a right elbow extended one that was like a 19-20 footer. So like he got to these short-range pull-up jumpers, and and again, they're tough. Like one of them was like a right shoulder fade, one of them was like a one-leg fade away, one of them was kind of like a step through leaner going to his left. They're kind of tough, but they're tough close to the rim, which dramatically improves your accuracy in that range. And I thought all of that was significant in the Boston paint attack in this game. Do you guys remember after the Bulls game, I said that the Celtics were averaging just 47 points in the paint per game, which ranked 27th in the league. They're averaging 61 points in the paint per game over their last 3 games, which ranks 4th in the league over that span. Really, really encouraging trends in that approach. All of them stuff that I've been talking about on the show. This game wasn't so much the running in transition for layups and threes, for layups instead of threes, but that was a big one in previous games. Crashing the offensive glass, cutting more instead of spotting up, the physical aggression into the paint in their post-up situations. All of that has helped turn around their paint attack over the course of the last week. Kristaps Porzingis. We talked a lot on this show about just how important he is and how he unlocks everything that Boston does because of his ability to shoot the basketball, to beat switches, and to protect the rim credibly. He made 8 field goals in this game on his way to 24 points. He had 1, but that was outside of those specific play types. It was a kind of like a off-screen move on Maxi Kleber where he took him downhill, turned his back, and then went with a really hard sell on a left shoulder fade with a really hard pump fake. Maxi went for it, then he stepped through and dunked it with 2 hands. But every single other one of his 7 shots, or the 7 others of his 8 shots that he made, all of them were either help beaters or switch beaters. At the start of the game, Dallas had Derek Lively roaming all over the floor. And it wasn't even just sitting back in a drop coverage. It was Jaylen Brown would catch the ball in the post, and Derek Lively would just sprint down to the basket and just offer backside help. And it was clearly schematic because Derek would run and then he'd immediately point to other Dallas players to rotate around. So clearly that was part of the game plan coming into this game. But here's the thing. If you're going to have a game plan where your center is ignoring your center to go help underneath the basket, you got to have a guy who can burn him there. And Kristaps Porzingis just burned him time and time again by hitting deep threes. And then one of the biggest stories of this game, I thought, was Boston trying to attack Luka and Kyrie as much as they possibly could in screening actions and in ISO and post-up situations. Porzingis was a big part of that. He had multiple baskets attacking both Luka and Kyrie Irving in post-up situations. And I just thought it was a great example of just how important Porzingis is to kind of growing the margin of error for this team and raising this team's ceiling. I thought he was incredible. And then Jaylen Brown, he's just been outrageously good in the last couple of weeks. I was super impressed by his playmaking in this game, like I mentioned earlier. He was one of the guys that kept punishing Lively for helping. They had 4 assists just in the first half without a single turnover. He was another one of those guys that was attacking Luka and Kyrie in switches. He blew by Luka on a baseline drive and went through him for an and one. He bullied Kyrie into the middle of the floor for a little push shot in the lane. I thought he was awesome. And then he blew the game open in the early fourth quarter with that run where he beat Luka off the dribble and then made the 360 layup. And then he had a step back 3 against, I want to say it was against Daniel Gafford in a drop coverage on the left wing. But he was a big part of how they blew the game open. Jaylen Brown's last 4 games, 27 points, 7 rebounds, and 4 assists, 60% from the field, 43% from 3, and has had a plus-minus of at least plus 15 in all 4 of his games. And again, the points in the paint stuff is just super, super encouraging. They're starting to figure out that they need more offensive versatility. I've been really, really happy with what I'm seeing from them on that end of the floor. On the Dallas front, I said on the show that they had been defending really well, but that it was against a weaker stretch in their schedule. They had a couple of tough games in there against the Thunder and against the Suns, but for the most part in that stretch, it was bad teams or good teams that were severely injury limited. And so this road trip was a great test for them, an opportunity to see if their defense is legitimate or if it was some fool's gold. And I know it's just 4 games, but man, did they fail the test miserably. They end up going 1-3. They give up at least 120 points in every game. They had a 126.4 defensive rating in the 4 games. And for perspective, just so you guys can get a feel for what that number means, Washington currently holds the worst defensive rating in the league at 119.9. So we're talking catastrophically bad defense from Dallas. Now on tape, it mostly comes down to poor point of attack defense and over-helping. I talked a lot about this in the Boston game as it pertained to leaving Kristaps Porzingis, but it's a pretty consistent issue where even from the guard position, they're just ignoring corner shooters to come into the lane to try to tag rollers and things along those lines. They gave up 17 made threes on the road trip on 44% shooting, both of those dead last in the league over that 4-game span. They only gave up 51 points in the paint per game over that span, which is pretty solid, actually. That's not bad at all. So, overhelping was the main culprit of their defensive issues. That in transition defense, which we'll talk about in a little bit. There was a big part of Boston's run there where PJ Washington got red hot from three. He made 3 threes in a row, and it was 81-79 in the middle of the third quarter. And then Boston literally just scored in transition time and time again right after that as they blew the game open because Dallas just wasn't matched up. Not talking, not communicating, like two guys on the big man running the floor, nobody spreading out to shooters on the wing. They blew the game with defensive execution in transition and in overhelp situations. You know, I want to be clear. A lot of this I put on Jason Kidd because I Derek Lively. It looked like on tape that he wasn't just helping freelancing. It looked like he would leave Porzingis to dive down into the lane, and he'd be directing traffic and telling people to rotate. That tells me it's schematic. So like the encouraging side of that is like that means that it's fixable. You know, like this transition defense stuff. They're 26th in transition defense according to Cleaning the Glass. It's like points added per transition possession or something like that is the name of the metric. But it's like their kind of like all-inclusive transition metric. And they're 26th. They give up 1.33 points per transition possession, which I think ranks 27th in the league. So like the transition defense thing has been an issue all season. That to me is always fixable. That's just run hard and communicate. That's literally all it is. Run hard and communicate. But that said, Dallas fans, I understand that it can look really dark right now. I have 5 silver linings for you guys that makes me feel like there's still light at the end of this tunnel, even after the discouraging road trip. First of all, 1, many of the defensive issues they have are fixable, and they have the personnel to be better than they've showed. Transition defense, like I talked about, just execution, running back and communicating, overhelping, scheme and execution. That's on the coach. That can be remedied. And then 3, the personnel. They have good perimeter defenders, and Derek Lively, like this is my second silver lining. Derek Lively is just awesome. Again, the overhelping thing was a scheme. I actually thought he had a really nice two-way game. He has really good instincts and length and mobility. He had an awesome game on offense, too, running his lane in transition and rolling hard to the rim and pick and roll. He had like this nasty dunk where he dunked on like 3 Celtics. He actually reminds me a lot of Tyson Chandler, which obviously was the anchor of the Dallas championship team. So like no matter what happens this season for Dallas, that's a massive silver lining, just how damn good Derek Lively is. Third silver lining. As a team, they rebounded really well on the road trip. They grabbed 73.4% of available defensive rebounds on the road, which I think is a really strong indicator that the deadline moves they made helped them fortify one of their biggest weaknesses. Again, that was a huge issue for the initial chunk of the season. They were not a good defensive rebounding team. Fourth silver lining, PJ Washington got his three-point shot going. Talked about the 3 threes in a row that he hit in the third quarter against Boston to get the game close, but he shot 36% from 3 on 6.3 attempts during the road trip. That's super encouraging. And then lastly, the fifth silver lining, both Kyrie and Luka were awesome. Luka on the road trip, 36, 10, and 12 on 53% from the field and 39% from 3. Kyrie, 27, 4, and 3 on 47% from the field and 39% from 3. That duo gives you a real chance, as long as you can sharpen those things up on the defensive end. So really discouraging, borderline disastrous road trip, but some silver linings in there for Dallas.